Good morning and welcome to another interesting edition of Women Empowerment Program, still being organized and sponsored by the Rule of Law and Empowerment Initiative, also known as Partners West Africa Nigeria P1. My name is Nkem Okereke, your host for this show with my co-host Ijoma Igwe. Sometime in September 2014, United Nations Women kicked off its latest campaign, He for She. The campaign aims to invite support from boys and men on solving gender inequality issues and making men and boys advocate for women's rights. For today, we'll be discussing the He for She campaign with our guest, Peter Manch, who is a renowned gender advocate and He for She champion with UN Women. We'll go on a short break now and then come back with our guest.
Welcome back. Our guest is a professional program specialist in the areas of gender equality, peace, security, and humanitarian response. Over the years, he successfully coordinated the implementation of several innovative and result-oriented initiatives for the promotion of the rights of girls and women, including the launch of the He for She campaign in Nigeria, at national level and at least in 8 states of the Federation. He is currently the program specialist, Women, Peace and Security with UN Women. Welcome with us today, our guest, Mr. Peter Manch. Good morning, Mr. Peter. You're welcome to the show.
Good morning, Ijoma. It's a pleasure being here.
Welcome.
Good morning, Nkem. And good morning, viewers.
Yes, so you know our topic for today, the He for She campaign.
Yeah.
We would like to ask you, what is the He for She campaign about, and why do you think it is necessary?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that gender inequality is a global issue. And when I talk about gender equality, I talk about, the situation, social, economic, and political opportunities denied to a particular gender, which is the female gender. We all know that globally women are actually discriminated upon, are denied access to education, access to decision-making positions, among other challenges, largely tied to socio-cultural factors. So, and then globally, including UN Women, different institutions have been working towards bridging the gender gaps that exist. And it came to the knowledge of actors that, look, this gender equality, we can actually bridge the gap when we engage men. Not just men, but boys, because boys will eventually become men. Yeah. You know, there's a common phrase, catch them young. So UN Women like you rightly mentioned in the introduction, on the 20th of September 2014, the campaign was launched by the then UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, and UN Women Global Goodwill Ambassador, Emma Watson. She's a very famous actress. They launched the campaign, and the whole idea is that they felt, look, once you engage men as He for She champions, these men can actually transform other men to become gender champions, to fight for the rights of women and girls. And the campaign is saying, look, gender inequality or gender issues are not women issues as most people think. It's a human rights issue, and it's an issue that affects both men and women. And therefore, we cannot leave only the women to fight for gender equality. We need to bring men, and that's the whole rationale behind it, bringing men on board. And they set up a very ambitious goal. The goal is that we need to have at least 1 billion men to be He for She champions. All over the world, yes. And I think it's ambitious but very realistic. As I speak today, we have over 3 million men that have committed to this campaign globally. And I'm happy to say that Nigeria is among the countries that have also keen to that agenda. So the whole, in summary, the He for She campaign is a look, bringing men and boys, creating a systemic platform where these individuals can begin to work for gender equality, to fight for the right of women and girls, and work collectively with women. And of course, we have men like that. So that was the whole rationale, to bridge the gender gap that exists, and to also change the narrative that gender inequality is a business for both men and women. We have to work together as partners. So that's the rationale. And the goal, I mean, the objective is to bridge the gender gap, because once you bridge the gender gap, then you have even development for the benefit of both men and women. Yeah, and importantly for also boys, because most time people think the He for She campaign is targeting only men. No, it's also boys, because we also recognize that once you groom a child to respect the right of a girl, to respect the right of women, to ensure that there is fairness to both gender, that child is likely to be a He for She champion like myself. I think I give the credit to my parents for laying a very solid foundation for me, and I think it's a good way to go.
So you said in Nigeria, over 3 million men and boys.
No, globally.
Okay,
Globally, over 3
million boys and men have committed to this He for She.
Yeah.
How do they show their commitment? When they say they are committed, or when you say they are committed, what do they do for us to say, okay, this person is committed to the He for She gender gap?
Yeah, thank you for that interesting question. So the commitment, there are different approaches. So for the He for She campaign, it uses two approaches. One is online, social media. There is a website, www.heforshe.org, where you can log in wherever you are in the world, and there's a place where you can commit. And it's in 10 seconds you can commit as a man. So you just provide 3 basic information: your name, your country, and of course your email. Once you provide this information, you select your country and click the commitment. There is a statement that says, look, I join millions of men to fight and support the rights of girls and women at all times. So it's like a pledge or a commitment you make. Once you click, the number for your country will increase. And interestingly, the countries that are leading, the top 5, Nigeria is not there. If you check today, Nigeria unfortunately just have about over 5,500 men that have committed to the campaign. There are countries that are doing very well. India is number 1, followed by Rwanda. Rwanda in Africa is also doing very well. I mean, over 200 million have committed. 200,000 individuals or citizens of Rwanda have committed. And how they do the rating is they look at the overall population and compare with the number. Nigeria has about 200 million. I mean, 5,000 is such an insignificant number. So one of the things we are trying to do is to ensure that because the reason is because we have quite a number of men that have committed, but they have not gone online to sign up, you know. So you can't use that to generalize that, okay, we only have 5,000 men. No. So like I said, there are 2 approaches. One is online. The other one is practical, physical, you know, where you engage men. For instance, UN Women have, through our program, engaged a lot of men. Initially launched in 2017. He launched the campaign with support from UN Women and the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs. Now, since that 2017, about 8 states now have key into that, you know, including Adamawa, Plateau, Gombe, currently Bauchi, Benue, even Borno, Yobe, Lagos, and very soon, I think in some few weeks to go, Cross River will also launch. And this launching are done by state governors. They mobilize men, traditional rulers, religious leaders, you know, gender advocates. And of course, they begin to come up with strategies on how they can mobilize other men, sensitize them to work as a network promoting gender equality, and we are seeing significant impact from these interventions. So these are the different approaches. Either you go online and make commitment, or you engage people practically, and I think that one is more impactful because it's not just signing that I commit. What action do you take after signing? Yes, we encourage people to go online and commit, but you know, it goes beyond that. It has to be practical. And interestingly, one of the things UN Women look out for as a he for she champion is what you do in public and in private. So a lot of people will come out in public and say, I'm a he for she champion, I support gender equality. They go home and they beat their wives. Or they go they go outside and do something contrary to the values and principles of the he for she campaign.
I'm sorry, I'll have to stop you here. Thank you very much for the education so far. I want to ask, do you think support for gender equality and women empowerment can be achieved through this campaign?
Obviously, yes. I mean, not exclusively by conducting this activity or this campaign, but this campaign will contribute to a large extent. In fact, there is a common saying that it's smart to engage men as he for she champions to promote gender equality. The reason is because we have discovered that men are very influential due to culture. We live in a patriarchal society where men decide what happens. There are some institutions, like the traditional institution, which is the custodian of cultures, and these cultures are discriminatory against the right of women and girls. These cultural practices violate the right of women and girls. For instance, early marriage, female genital mutilations, among others. These are cultural practices. Who are those that promote this? It's the traditional institutions, which is dominated largely by men. So how do you change this culture if you don't engage these men, if you don't sensitize them to understand the implication of these harmful practices? So for me, it's strategic, it's a smart approach, and that's why people say, oh, you are a man and you work with UN Women. UN Women have recognized the fact that, you know, yes, it focuses more on women, it's positively biased towards women, but they have men. The country representative in Nigeria is a woman, the deputy country representative is a man. And we have, you know, so some good number of men who are he for she champions supporting the agenda. So it's a smart approach and it's a better way to break the barriers, especially when you look at the barriers that have to do with culture and patriarchy. You definitely need men's support. And smart women engage men as he for she champions to promote their rights.
Okay. So ask you the next question. What can you say have been the impacts of the campaign so far? Have there been enough impacts that you can lay your hands on to say yes?
Yes, a lot. And maybe I'll start at home, Nigeria. I'll give you some practical examples to show how impactful it has been. When we launched the campaign in Plateau State, Adamawa and Gombe, in 2017 and 2018, there was no woman in the traditional council. It was exclusively reserved for men. They take decisions on issues of peace and security, among others. They don't bring women on board. But through the he for she campaign, we engaged them and we converted some of these traditional rulers that were against women together with them. At the end of the program, from a baseline of 0 in 2014 when we started, to 2018, from 0, we had 107 women in Plateau who were brought into the traditional councils as members and advisors. The same thing in Adamawa State. From a baseline of 0, we had over 400 women that are still now in the traditional council. In Adamawa State, when we started, there were 40 women. The mayor of Kaltungo had 40 women. He believed in this gender equality, and I guess it's because of exposure. He lived all his life in the US. He retired as a pilot, and when he got back, he got the first-class traditional title. And he felt it doesn't make logical sense to take decision without women. So he brought 40 women on board. Of course, he got resistance, according to him initially. When he goes for meetings with other traditional, they say, oh, women should not be allowed. He insisted, he stood on his ground, that if these women are not allowed to enter this meeting, I will not be part of this meeting. So they got used to it. But as we speak, from 40, the number of women in the traditional council in Gombe now is over 200. And what the mayor of Kantugo told us is that these women are able to take better decisions than men. When there are conflict between community A and B, he sent these women as mediators, and they come out with better outcomes. And he's saying if women have capacity, skills, and better, mediation skill, why should we not engage them? So that has actually transformed the mindset of people. We interviewed the women, and they said, look, even in their communities, they are respected more now, because if there is conflict, they are the ones that intervene, so men don't look down on them anymore. That's just practical examples. And in other states where we have launched the campaign, we have also seen these champions mentoring other men, going to schools, universities, sensitizing other men. So there is a whole network of men, motivating others, encouraging others to promote the rights of women. So yes, indeed, in Nigeria we have seen, just like is recorded in other countries, we are beginning to see some positive changes where women are using these men as allies to promote gender equality. And I'm a practical examples. For over a decade I've been on this, and I will tell you that through different programs that we've implemented, we always have a component for he, for she, and the result, the outcome are always very impactful.
Okay. I'm sorry, before we go on a break, I'm going to ask you this question. When you said Nigeria, so you kept on mentioning Adamawa, Gombe, the north. Do you intend to launch this campaign in the southwest and southeast and south? What are your plans towards that?
Good question. Why I mentioned those states is because, initially we got a funding from the European Union, and 3 states were selected. For the Women, Peace and Security. Adamawa, Plateau, and Gombe were selected by the EU, but also a national steering committee selected these states, and we had to integrate he for she component on that. Currently, we are also working on a Women, Peace and Security program funded by the government of Norway, and Bauchi and Benue were selected. We also integrated that. But I did mention that we have launched, last year we launched the campaign in Lagos State. The governor himself was there to launch it. And like I mentioned earlier, we are also planning to launch the campaign in Cross River, I think in a couple of weeks from now. Yes, so the goal is that we want all the 36 states to launch this campaign, but we have to do it step by step. But most time is actually influenced by funding that we are able to access and donor-supported initiative. But we are also encouraging, the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs is encouraging all the governors in Nigeria to launch the campaign in their respective states, regardless of funding support or not, because of the value addition it will bring. And one of the reference points is look at the states that have launched the campaign. Have there been any impact? If there is, then it makes logical sense to replicate such in their respective states. So there's a lot of sensitization and awareness campaign for people to see the benefit of this campaign, the benefit of engaging men. Because once there is gender equality, there is sustainable development for both men and women. And of course, in Nigeria, and as is obtainable globally, women constitute about 50% of the population. It makes logical sense to address issues that affect half of your population. And gender inequality is a major issue. Issues of discrimination against women. We have the 7 principles of women empowerment. One of it, of course, emphasizes access to education. Nigeria has one of the worst statistics when it comes to out-of-school children, and a significant percentage are women. Issues of the rights of women in workplace, promotion, issues of gender-based violence. We know that 1 in 3 women have been subjected to one form of gender-based violence. And the COVID-19 pandemic has, made the whole situation worse. During the lockdown, I think a survey was conducted, and it shows that in all the 6 geopolitical zones, the statistics has tripled. Cases of rape and abuse against women. So it's very rampant. I'm happy we have the Violence Against Person Prohibition Act, which has been was launched at the national level, and a good number of states have domesticated it. But we are also saying, look, it's not good enough to just domesticate it. Implement it, popularize it, let people know about it. and ensure that perpetrators are dealt with. So that will serve as a deterrent to others who abuse the rights of women and girls.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So we'll go on a short break and then come back again and continue this wonderful conversation on He for She campaign with our guest, Mr. Pichamanta. Please stay tuned.
Welcome back from our short break, and I hope you're also enjoying this interesting conversation we are having with our guest for today. We would also like to hear your views. What do you think about He for She before now? What was your thought about He for She? We'd like you to go on our comments page and give us some idea or your thought about the He for She campaign. Mr. Peter, before we go on a break, you mentioned, you talked about women empowerment principles, which the UN Women is also working on. So I would like to find out from you, what's the relationship? Do you think there's a connection between the He for She campaign and the women empowerment principles?
Obviously, yes. Thank you for that question. The He for She campaign actually complements the 7 principles of women empowerment. Because if you look at the principles, it's talking about gender equality. How do you ensure that, women and men, boys and girls have equal access, for instance, to education, employment opportunities actually to maximize their potentials. So there is no discrimination on the basis of gender. That's what one of the principles looks at. The principle also look at, issues of abuse of the rights of women and girls, which the He for She campaign is also trying to address. The principle looks at the issue of, in business, for instance, how do you create an enabling environment for women to also maximize their potential in that sector? It looks at access to healthcare services and well-being of women. And if you look at the He for She, it's all. So I feel the He for She campaign and those principles of women empowerment, in fact, the He for She champions adopt those principles in whatever work they do. So they go hand in hand, is complementary. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. Now I understand the relationship between the He for She campaign and 7 principles of women empowerment being sponsored or championed by UN Women. So in this your He for She campaign, do you foresee any challenge, or have you encountered any challenge during this campaign or since it has been on?
Its challenge is inevitable. And when it comes to gender equality issue, especially in the African context, though globally, but especially in the African context, especially also in the Nigerian context, is a very challenging work to do. Why? Because our culture is, patriarchy is a major issue. Our culture actually is discriminatory against women, okay? And when you are trying to change cultural practices, it's not easy. I remember when we wanted to bring women on board, in the traditional council. In all the 2 states, Plateau and Adamawa, that eventually got positive result, they kicked against it. In fact, I remember they said, it's a no-go area, don't even talk about it, let alone even, convincing us to bring women. So it was a big battle. It took about 2 years to convince them.
So what were they thinking? Were they thinking women?
They felt, that this male domination of the traditional council is a cultural heritage that they inherited from their great-grandparents, and we want them to change it. So it was quite difficult, and we know that, adaptation to changes are not easy, especially cultural issues. So we have to be systematic and strategic in our approach to convince them. In fact, we produced a video documentary where we interviewed the mayor of Kaltungo, how he brought women, and we captured the changes, the transformation, the positive transformation that occurred in those communities because of bringing women on board. And that was what convinced them. So that's one challenge. Resistance is inevitable, not just in the traditional institution, in all sectors. I mean, we work with the security institutions, we work with the media, we work with MDAs, among other stakeholders. And most of these sectors, we get resistance. But what I tell people is that you can't celebrate success without overcoming challenges. Definitely you get backlash. People will say, no, this is Africa, this is Nigeria, this has to be done this way. But what I tell them is culture is dynamic. It changes over time. And what I also tell them is that what our great-grandparents never knew, we know. If they know what we know, or if they knew what we know, they wouldn't. In the past, twins are killed. Today, most couples pray to have twins. My wife prayed to have twins. So people played, they see it as double blessing. So why are we not saying, oh, our great-grandparents used to kill twins? Why should
continue?
Our great-grandparents were wearing leaves as clothes. But today, if you wear leaves and you move around the street, people will think you are insane. Why? Because they have recognized that there are better ways of covering yourself with beautiful clothes and not leaves. So we need to change some negative traditional and cultural practices that are discriminatory. We are not condemning our cultural values. We have some very positive cultural values like respect for elders. It's a very positive cultural values. You can't call your parents, for instance, by their first name. But if you go to other countries, it's a normal thing. Go to UK, go to USA, you see a child of 5 years will call his father by his name. Here sometimes you can't even greet your elders without prostrating. I mean, it's a sign. So we have positive cultural values which we support, but the ones that are harmful, that limit one from maximizing one's potentials, that are discriminatory, these are the ones we condemn, and we try to make them realize that we are more enlightened. FGM, for instance, has led to the death of many people. Some that were lucky to survive live a terrible life because of health complications. So it's not just the violation of human rights, but it's also devastating as it threatens their lives. And I'm sure no right-thinking parents will want their children to die prematurely because of some cultural practices. So these are some that we get challenge, we get resistance at all levels, But one of the things I will tell our he for she champions or potential he for she boys and men is that challenges are inevitable. When they come, don't give up. Keep re-strategizing like we did in those traditional institutions to cause the change we want. I mean, Nigeria has one of the worst statistics of women in decision making after the last general election. We are one of the worst. Rwanda is doing very well. Rwanda has even more women in parliament. And you can see the kind of development happening there at the moment. So what we are saying is, let's not underutilize the potentials of women. They can contribute, they have value to add. But we always say, oh, this is a woman. People sometimes think that strength has to be physical. That men are physically stronger. But when it comes to governance, it goes beyond physical strength. We have intellectual strength. I mean, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala is doing very well. She's the DG of World Trade Organization. She was with World Bank. She was the former finance minister of the economy in Nigeria. She has gone places. And one of the things that I really like when she said is that she gets 100% support from her husband. So most women that you see are thriving very well, check their background. When they have the support of their husband, who are he or she, they are likely to maximize their potentials. And the benefit goes beyond to women alone. Also men benefit. Her husband is proud of her. He's benefiting from her success. And I think that is the message that I really want to pass across to all men there. If you empower a woman, you are empowering yourself, you are empowering other men as well. It's not just only women.
Peter has answered the last question. that was actually the last question we were going to ask you. The takeaways. What do you want people to take away from the discussion? Yeah. You've summed it up. I don't know if you wanted to sum it up again. You've really summed everything up. The men needs to be included in the he for she. The he for she campaign is not just for women. It's beneficial to both
men and women.
Both men and women. And just to add to what he said, when he talked about the funding. Most of the he for she campaign have been from funders.
Yeah.
I think it's time for our government to sit up and understand that the campaign is not just, we shouldn't wait. Yes, we shouldn't wait for funders to come.
Yeah.
It's something beneficial to the country. So why do we have to wait for funders? So we need the governors to take ownership, make sure that the he for she campaign, it becomes something, it becomes a normal thing, you know, for everyone. Yes, for everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peter, and thank you very much, our viewers, for listening to this wonderful conversation. Please feel free to drop in the comments topics you would like us to discuss still on this platform. Join us again next week as we discuss another interesting topic still of women empowerment. See you next week, and bye.